other first aid supplies, a simple, wraps. They're in each patrol car. And they've already been used.
As I say, you've used them, right? There was a not too long ago where 2 officers utilized the chest seal on a gunshot wound, correct?
Yes. And initially, I never included it, but we are in the process of buying new vests also, so.
I asked you in the public safety meeting, how many officers were wearing bulletproof vests that were outdated. You told me approximately 32. Your words to me were that you were gonna do everything you could to buy these officers new vests because you wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that that vest possibly failed and an officer was injured or lost his life, correct?
Correct, definitely.
Are there any companies out there that offer a longer use or longer lifespan of a vest that you know of?
5 years seems to be the general consensus from my research. That's all I had.
Were we at one time talking about,
We purchased the body. Yes.
I mean, I know we got some, but I wasn't sure about like,
We bought all.
On page 52, it says $7,000.
I'm sorry, what page was that?
52.
Yeah, it's a 5-year contract, $70,000 a year that we entered into this year.
That included repair of anything broken or replacement, basically all covered for 5 years.
Cloud based.
Sounds like to me we need some new police cars.
We definitely could use them, and I'm sure Pat could go into more detail on the vehicles as he knows them better than anyone.
You see them every day. Some of them, inside of 5 years, we're replacing the engines and transmissions. It's not due to lack of maintenance, it's just simply usage. I would argue that the city does not own a vehicle that is subjected to more severe duty than a police car.
Is that because they're driven city driving rather than, say, a sheriff's department car, state trooper car, which is more highway driving,
Yeah.
more abuse?
Stop and go, idling. They don't get it. I don't think a car gets abused more than it doesn't being abused. Just it's the way it's used.
I have concerns if you have a police car that has 130 or 160,000 miles on it, and an officer's involved in a pursuit, how is that vehicle gonna hold up to a pursuit with higher speeds? Is this thing gonna fall apart in the process? Is the officer gonna be injured? Is the civilian gonna be injured? Things are coming apart.
You talk mileage alone, and then you think about how much these cars idle and stop and go.
They're used around the clock.
Exactly, so it's not just 162,000 miles that's being used, the amount of hours on the vehicle.
How much money do you have in your asset forfeiture money right now?
Local.
Combined, that you could buy cars with if you had.
Usually we buy it out of DWI, asset DWI money, which is $34,151.
So you could buy one car with
One car. And I'd be cutting it close.
that. And as far as like drug money or something like that, that you would receive from the feds or whatever, that's not, there's no guarantee on that. You
No.
don't know what you're gonna get from year to year.
No, there's
So
no
you-
guarantee, and that's where I pulled the money from the house.
And you sold an all-terrain vehicle that was purchased by the previous chief,
Mhm.
along with the DA's office,
Yep.
I think about $20,000. You sold that because it was used how many times?
4 or 5 times, minimal.
And that's what you're using that money to purchase what?
Well, right now, that's in our account. Right now, we're using strictly the federal asset forfeiture money for the bus. We have cases outstanding that we're expecting to get more money, but that we don't know how much, and we don't know when.
And also add that just like trucks, police cars, they got long lead times too. And that's the same situation.
We ordered our new Durango in April or early May of this year, and we still don't have it. And the dealers has no estimate.
It's not like a Durango off the lot.
Right.
I mean, it has a police package on it, which is much different than just buying a Durango off the lot.
Anybody have any other questions for Chief? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Coon?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to see everybody. Before we kind of go through the book, I prepared a couple of remarks, if you guys would indulge me just for a couple minutes. Just a couple of remarks from me, some highlights, if you will. As an organization, the fire department recognizes that structural fiscal challenges remain a top concern for the city, despite the potentially positive impact of American Rescue Funds. Therefore, we've crafted an extremely conservative, carefully researched budget request for 2022. Your command staff has spent a great deal of time making suggestions and gathering historical data to assemble the most cost-effective budget possible. As you are aware, increasing call volume continues to overburden our emergency response system, especially in the realm of emergency medical services. Call volume as of today's date has increased over 9% compared to last year. To absorb this additional volume, we continue to rely on our neighboring departments to provide assistance in the form of mutual aid. Your command staff remains committed to developing a multi-year operational plan for use as a guiding instrument to meet current and future challenges. While still a work in progress, our central goal will always remain the same: to provide safe, reliable, and sustainable fire protection and emergency medical services to the citizens of Jamestown. Our budget request is considered the absolute minimum needed to meet the demands for our services. While we recognize the fact that some capital items are unable to be funded this year, we will continue to strive for additional efficiencies in administration and operations. Your command staff remains committed to regular reviews of our budget with the Comptroller's Office to ensure the maximum value is extracted out of every dollar spent. This includes, but is not limited to, fuel consumption, supplies, overtime costs, and controls over emergency repairs. We are very organized with budget monitoring, and we have effective controls in place to spot shortfalls when they arise. Our staff is ever vigilant to ensure the best care is given to our equipment and our facilities. While we remain cognizant of the fact that adjustments are sometimes needed, we strive to remain flexible and prepared. In the event of an unforeseen event, we are dedicated to providing the best possible information to you guys as the stakeholders so informed decisions can be made. My staff and I truly believe that all of us are a team, and we are committed to working with you and the administration to have the best fire department possible. If I could direct you guys in the executive budget book at page 62. The 100 account, if you guys would look just quickly at the salary lines, the 100 account has a larger sum to it this year due to contractual obligations, but there is no increased staffing in this budget. The staffing remains the same as it was last year. A couple things in the 400 account, just of note, then I'll jump down to the 200 account. Our uniform cost has gone up double. Pricing has gone up from our suppliers. And just like you've heard previously this evening, getting equipment and supplies has a very extended lead time. Some things are still fairly simple to get, like medical supplies. Other things like uniform costs are increasing almost double. I'm working on getting some new quotes from our vendors for uniform costs. Turnout gear is purchased, it's a little bit separate, it's not considered in uniforms, but the line below that for turnout gear, we still try to maintain replacing our turnout gear on a regular basis. We burn through our turnout gear at a rate of about 7 years per person. Okay, so out of 55 members that have turnout gear, they need their turnout gear, really, we should be buying 10 sets per year. In recent years, we've been buying 5 because of the contractual costs.
What's the difference between turnout gear and uniform?
Yep. Turnout gear would be the actual structural firefighting clothing, it has to meet NFPA. Our uniforms would be the boots and the uniform shirts, and the station coats, the ones that they wear out for non-fire related things. Jumping down to 454, travel and education. You'll notice there's just a slight increase in there. We still endeavor to send as many people to the academy as possible. That includes recruit firefighter training. It all comes out of that line. The academy is generally run with state funds. There is no tuition for us to send our members to the fire academy. It's strictly the lodging and the meals, and then any incidentals that they incur down there, textbooks or something along that line. Most of the time, even our members are taking their own computers down to be able to complete the coursework, so there's not an additional cost there. There is a computer lab at the academy. Just something noteworthy so you all are aware. The academy now is expressed to us over recent months that the lead time to sending a student through the academy could be up to 12 months. They're still running restricted based on COVID restrictions, and as guidance keeps coming down through PC in Albany as to how many students they're permitted to allow to attend those courses, that's really guiding the timeline. Our experience has been this year that replacements that we hired earlier this year will be completing their training at the end of this month. Right? But it's just something to plan for. Unfortunately, the state doesn't run on the same fiscal year that we do. They generally are going to want names earlier in the year, and until we can get people actually onboarded to send them down there, it's just going to create a longer lead time.
So
it's
in
just
other words, they don't let you hold a place holder, you know you're hiring three?
no John and Jane Does. They need actual names of students that are going to be attending, or they will put that spot to
Is
another
that a
student.
recent change, or you used to be able to hold a place holder?
It actually began earlier this year, going back to fourth quarter of 2020, when we approached the academy about potentially opening and having openings in the spring session. They advised us that they needed student names because they were putting their rosters together as of January 1st. Myself, along with several other career chiefs from around the state who were involved in this particular Zoom call, expressed our displeasure with that because we have budgetary constraints. No bringing people on before January 1 when the budget takes effect. And the response from OFPC at that time, well, it may sound a bit callous, was, well, maybe your governing body needs to adopt a different structure to more align with the state's fiscal year. That being said, the state's fiscal year, as you guys know, is April 1st to March 31st. So for them, they're not faced with a different fiscal change as of January 1. So while they're not being unsympathetic, they are making the point that they're trying to get students into the program earlier to try to accommodate the wishes of the career chiefs to have their education be as robust as possible. So again, don't take that statement out of context. It is just something to be aware of. If we wait till after January 1st to onboard people, there is a chance we will not be able to send them to the spring session.
Okay, and that's another. Last, we trained firefighters in-house, and they only went to the state academy for pertinent courses.
True.
You have a new full-time training officer,
We do.
would it be something that you,
I can certainly look into that. I'm not opposed to doing training locally. A lot of what it comes down to, guys, is the live burns. The NFPA standard has changed, so there is cost to bring additional personnel in to do that. Obviously, the local instructors, I'm sure, would be happy to help us out with that.
but if you can't get them in a class, it's tough to find, it may be your only option.
True. That very well could be true.
They're
They
not
still have to meet the
allowing you
state
to
standard.
reserve 3 locations, you know you have 3 pending retirements, so you're going to hire 3, and they won't let you submit John Smith, Joe Smith, and Matt Smith, then
They will not. Again, I'm not opposed. I'm certainly willing to look at that, or even a different academy, I mean, that option is there, there's just additional costs to that. Our analysis has been up to the present, the most cost-effective thing is to send them to the fire academy. It's the cheapest of all.
Understand that, you have your full-time training officer and a safety instructor, that maybe it's time to look at option B, if you're going to hire three, and we're not gonna be able to get them in there.
With the firefighters that you have at the academy now, when they're done with their training, you get full numbers, or have people put in for retirements for next year that you're gonna have to replace?
It's the latter, not the former. So we will be up to full when they graduate at the end of October. There are 3 potential retirements coming next year. 3 have indicated their intent to retire.
Okay.
But the ones that are graduating now, you are replacing staff that went this year.
Correct.
So you're gonna need to fill 3 positions next year.
Right, we will suggest.
Matt, on page 63,
Yes, sir.
the battalion chief salaries, there's 2 lines that are really big, is that?
Yep, I did it a little different this year. Their buyouts are included in there. Those are 2 of the positions that are intending to retire next year. So there should be no surprises there.
No, I,
That's why they look so
huge
large.
increase,
Mhm.
so that's,
Well, when the
That's-
contingent-
right, but you've included the buyout and that line and the.
Correct.
Right,
Yep,
that's-
one is retiring at the end of April presumably, the other one will be retiring in July. So it's inclusive of their salary to date, to up to their retirement date and the buyout.
Unfortunately, that's.
I mean,
always
there's
been
no
the way.
names in here, so, I mean, 88,000 to 200. I mean, that's worth more. But anyway,
Skipping up again back to page 62, if you guys could. Down to medical expenses, line 472. You guys have already agreed for funding earlier this year for a second ambulance. Now, like you've heard previously this evening, getting another ambulance is going to take a while. There's no chips, it's a chip issue. An ambulance is like a patrol car that way, it's a purpose-built vehicle, so it's not like we can just go down and buy one off the lot. There isn't any to be had. So, the medical expenses, we tried to increase that line to be more realistic and be reflective of deploying a second ambulance as well. So that's where that noted increase is, it's over double for what it was. Down to the 200 account, if you guys would, just for a quick moment. Water hose is obviously, that's a year-over-year expense, there should be no surprises there. Computer workstations for the fire stations, again, we want to make sure that we're keeping up with the existing computers that we have in the stations. As we move forward with our fire records project that we partnered with the county with, the computers some of them are getting pretty old, and we're rotating the computers around, but we're still gonna need to replace 3 of them.
Are you talking, is this for furniture?
No,
You're talking actual computers?
correct.
Sorry, the furniture, we refer to workstations as actual physical.
With the whole setup.
Yeah.
The last one item there you'll see that was funded was one replacement automatic external defibrillator. Again, second ambulance, we are gonna need an AED for that vehicle. Any questions I can answer for you guys so far? If you would then please, just towards the back of the book, on page 172, you'll see the items in there that were requested under the ARP. There's also a separate, in your catalog, there's a separate description for each one of these items. Just direct your attention to kind of our top 4, if you will, or 3 plus a half. We, as a command staff, I've met with them several times over some of these issues. These are the top 3, and then one additional most pressing things that we really have facing us today, as far as those capital expenditures go. And again, this list probably doesn't look much different than what you guys have seen in the past. You know, as you guys are aware, the fire stations are old. They've suffered from deferred maintenance over the years. We do our best to keep up with them, but there are some updates that need to be done. So top of the list would be the roof at Station 4. That was included. I can't thank the DPW staff enough for helping us put all of that together. We do have quotes to do that roof. Depending on when we can fit it into the pipeline, we will probably likely have to get that re-quoted. Make sure that the material costs haven't changed. Station 5's truck room floor, as you guys are aware, there's a structural issue there. The building is certainly not unsafe. However, the floor on the east-facing side of the building, the east bay, has severely deteriorated over the years. It's been a lot to do with road salt. That station was not built for the weight of the fire equipment that we have today. It was built for motorized equipment, doesn't go all the way back to horses and buggies, but that station has a basement in it. Since it was set up to be heated with coal, it has a walkout basement. So there's structural steel that actually holds the floor up. The steel is rusted, the concrete decking is starting to deteriorate, and it's resulted in pieces of the concrete falling into the basement below. So pretty much it's a daily thing with the members of the fire department go down there and they sweep up those pieces, so you're not tripping on them in the poor lighting and stuff. Number 3 there, backup generators for the stations. Fire stations fall within the top 5 of buildings that should have emergency backup power. 2 out of our 3 outside stations, stations 3 and 4, are heated with electric only. If the power goes off, we have portable Coleman campsite generators that have been in those stations for 21 years that are not pre-connected. We physically have to carry them out, set them up, put extension cords through the windows, and then start the generator and try to run what we can, which does not include the heat. That's just lights and to be able to run the door up and down. So backup generators for the stations that are natural gas powered, presumably, that'd be the cleanest, most cost-effective thing for us, would enable those stations to run on a continuous basis and provide them with the heat that they would need. A station, a firehouse, guys, is just like your own residence. You can't leave that place unheated for a period of time, or you're gonna have a lot of problems in there, especially if the pipes freeze. And anything in that particular realm, if we were into an extended thing where the power was ever off like that, those stations are gonna be utilized. We're gonna have to, obviously rely on them, because the calls will continue to come in, and we have to still be able to respond no matter what. Last thing on there, overhead doors will probably be our next one. That's a $60,000 item in there. The overhead doors in the stations have been replaced since I worked here. They're about 21 years old. Some of them have deteriorated, especially the large, heavy doors that are on the City Hall station. Those doors make many trips up and down, and those doors require a lot of maintenance. When the springs break or the hinges pop off those doors, we cannot open those doors by hand. They're way too heavy to do that. The DPW's brought up their forklifts before to help us get those doors up and down. And if that door ever fell and hit somebody, that is going to be a severe safety and life hazard problem. So doing the doors is pretty far up on the list. They are old, they do need to be updated. There's huge gaps around them, which just drives our utility costs higher, to keep the buildings heated.
3 doors. There are 3 doors. That's the cost of.
That would be cost for all the stations, based on the quotes that we received, which, quite honestly, Councilman Nelson, that's substantially less than I expected.
Yeah.
So we'll see how far the money goes, but we'll see what we can do.
Anybody have any other questions for Deputy Chief Boone?
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to make a caveat that if anybody has any questions throughout this process, you don't have to wait till a work session. Feel free to email the finance department along with the department head for your questions. I think that's it for this week. Next week, 5:30 for clerk, treasurer, assessor, controller, information services, corporation counsel, DOD, and defense. So this will basically get us through every department and give us time to deliberate and discuss in November. And bring anybody back for further questioning or whatever else we need. Well, that's it for this portion of it.
Why did we front load all that? Right into the November.
Because they requested that we have more time up front.
I'm just curious. It's a lot to cover in 2 minutes.
Yep.
late start, so we'll get set with a regular agenda. Okay, so we'll call this meeting of the Jamestown City Council work session to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sheldon?
Here.
Brackman?
Here.
Karuba? Here. Olson?
Here.
Nelson?
Here.
Eckler? Here. Hanover?
Here.
Russell?
Here.
And President Wilson?
Here. Thank you. We do have one presentation tonight from Windstream. We have our guests here, so you guys can go first if you'd like to. Come on up.
Oh, great.
I'm sorry, I don't have your name, so I didn't.
No, that's fine. Let me give you a card here. Chris Thomas. So I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for Windstream. And with me is Rob Campbell. He's our local manager of operations. One more thing. So to the extent that you have, I guess, call them technical issues as far as a low line, a pull down, reach out to Rob. He'd be able to get those types of issues resolved much faster. To the extent it's something else as far as questions regarding the network or services or anything like that, please call me, or any government affairs, legal type things. I would be your contact. Let me pull up this. The previous meeting ended quickly. I was waiting out there, but not pulling this up. So I apologize. So,
There's no hurry, no pressure. Kickoff's in 16 minutes.
It's a 2-hour video though, so. No.
That's right.
While you are waiting to load that, we are waiting in many of the neighborhoods for double poles that need Windstream to attach to the new poles that were installed. It's been an issue for 2 years now.
Okay, great.
And
Well, not great,
I
but glad to
know-
hear.
No, it isn't great.
No, I'm
And
glad that you can bring it to our attention.
many individuals complaining and have been complaining for 2 years why the poles have not been switched, and I understand your, maybe not you directly, but if there's a name that I can contact, I will be glad to do that, to continue to express my concern for the residents who are not getting this taken care of.
Rob, who would be
Many
the-
of them are very close to driveways, the double poles are in their front yards. They really want them taken care of, so if you can give me the name, I'll be glad to add my
Do you
call
have?
to them. Do I have the location?
Yes.
I can certainly give them to you if you'll give me,
Citywide.
what's that? Yeah, mine out, and maybe citywide, but I've had 2 years
I know
of
you have
complaints.
certain ones.
So you know which ones I'm talking about, on McDaniel and on, I think, Huxley. But I would be glad to give you the locations and the pole numbers.
Yes, that, just the intersection, and they can find it. It's just the closest home address
Oh,
or
I can tell you, it's
intersection.
right at the end of Woodridge Avenue. And I happen to live on the other end of the street, and I go by these homes every day, and the people ask me when. So they've been patient.
Who would that-
They're
who would
running
that be,
out of
Rob?
patience.
Yeah, I mean, you have my card. If you can get me the addresses, I'll get somebody out there to take a look at all of those.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions while the projector is warming up? There we are, good. I think maybe get the lights. Yeah. Good? Okay, great. All right, so just wanted to introduce myself and Rob, a little bit about Windstream. There we go, great. So Windstream Holdings, we previously had been a publicly traded company. It is now privately held. As you might know, since we're in the community, financial issues caused it to go private. Went through bankruptcy 2 or 3 years ago, as you can imagine. Being in the business of providing landline telephone services was not great the last couple of years, so a lot of our cohorts, Frontier, CenturyLink, and others have seen similar issues. So that was the bad news. The good news is it was purchased by a private equity group that invested in the company. And a little bit about us here before I get into that. Not the biggest phone company, but certainly not a mom and pop. These are all the areas where we provide service across the country. So broadband, obviously there's the copper telephone service, but that's not what people are interested in learning about. 3 ways that we provide broadband to the home. So the old way is DSL. You can get up to 100 megabit download speeds, which is good, but you can't always get that. That depends upon the distance you are from some of our facilities. So if you're fortunate enough to be close, you can get 100 megabit over the copper lines. Fixed wireless is where we would take fiber, but not directly to the home. So take it into a neighborhood, this more rural areas, and then you can use antennas to get broadband there. Better than DSL oftentimes. You could get it to more homes more inexpensively, but not ideal. Fiber to the home is the state of the art. So that's what everybody has if they could get anything they want. So if you look in Manhattan or Chicago or the most densely populated, wealthy areas even, you're going to have fiber to the home because it provides the fastest, most reliable service. Where we are in New York, just our Western New York footprint, you can see a little bit on the previous slide. In Jamestown. So the blue indicates the fiber to the home network that I just said is what everybody wants. So I do a lot of these presentations, and what everybody wants is 1 gig service over fiber. That is, the dream of many, and something that we completed in Jamestown last year. So a lot of folks in the more rural areas have no fast service. They can't get gigabit speeds anywhere. Jamestown, both cable provider and us offer it. So you're kind of in a very rare situation of having a choice between high-speed providers, true high-speed broadband. So how do we do it? Just kind of a very simple area. So the top here is existing homes. So what we had done when we upgraded to fiber is we overlashed the actual fiber, the glass, to our copper network. So in the old residential areas, small businesses, office parks that had our copper service, they still do. So they can still get phone service over copper, or we can transfer to fiber, because fiber can also, with the right equipment, provide voice. To new developments, it's just all fiber. So there's no purpose in using the copper anymore. It's very expensive, and it's not as, doesn't have any, the same advantages of a fiber to the home network. And one of the big advantages that the competitors don't offer is synchronous transmission. So you hear about 1 gigabit, and download speed is what's most important. I mean, that's when you're ordering a Netflix movie or watching YouTube videos or what have you. The uploads is just putting out that request to Netflix or to whomever. So the speed is not as important today. And most, even if they offer gigabit service, whether it was over cable networks, it's never symmetrical. So it might be gigabit down, but only 20 meg up or 100 meg up. However, as time goes on, more people are sending more to it. So if you're sending big files, if you have a home business, the synchronous becomes important then, because it matters when you're sending large amounts of data. Fiber can do it in either direction. So as I mentioned, we were in bankruptcy, but now we had the $2 billion investment by the private equity firm that bought Windstream, and that's what we're doing the fiber upgrades. So, although Jamestown is one of the first places that we have done this, it's not the last, and we're looking and building throughout the footprint that I showed you there, slowly but surely. And part of that investment also is bringing engineering construction in-house. So previously we had contractors relied on outside companies to do our work, whether installations, repairs, new builds, whereas now we have the funds available to bring that in-house, which makes it more reliable, gives us better control, and allows us to deploy the fiber faster. And it's working. So just a summary there I found online actually of the customer satisfaction surveys since we've begun our upgrades. Just another example. So I put this up just because I thought it was kind of interesting. Maybe it's too small to see, if so I apologize. But just is a list of the speeds and the data usage for different devices. So from a smartwatch that uses 8 kilobytes, which is a very small amount, up to outdoor security or Wi-Fi enabled video, which is much more. And I've got a hard copy of that if anybody would be interested. Our fiber speeds, we have 3 different speeds we're offering: 400 megabit, 500, and 1 gig. And I just price this from $27 a month to $57. First 3 months are free, and then that's just still an introductory. The regular prices are between $55 and $85 though. And phone service, if you bundle that, the phone service is a little bit more if you want a landline. Oh, also, home security system is something we'll be offering now over our fiber network, which we can do now because of the increased bandwidth for fiber. And what's next? So, 1 gig is great, and it's more than most people need. We're testing 400 gig now, and right now it's at a commercial level and no residential offerings, but that's something that's on the horizon. As the data needs increase, so will the speed abilities of fiber, because it has, I won't say infinite capacity, but much greater capacity even than the 1 gig service that we're offering now. With the right equipment, you just have to change the equipment that's on it. So that was all. That's what I wanted to share. So I appreciate your time, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you have or any other concerns like the 2 poles.
I would just like to say, we did switch to your kinetics and one in our office. There's no issues at all. And I appreciate that, which is why I hope you'll take care of the other issue. Yes, and it has been tremendous in upgrading our speed, which is very, very slow. So I will tell you that it does work very, very well.
I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Have a good evening.
Sorry to make you wait.
Oh, no problem.
Like, wait and hurry up, right?
No, I understand.
Okay, we'll move on to opportunities for public comment.
I'm Doug Champ, I live at 225 Bowling Street in Jamestown. I'm here tonight to, first of all, I appreciate all the hard work that has been assembled in this budget process. I know how difficult it is, and the process is hard and long. However, it's an unusual time because we have 2 investment platforms. We have the general budget and we have the lost revenues. It's somewhat convoluted in some ways because that's like a wish list over here. The general fund is in place, has been for a long, long time. But these are the math facts, and that's what I'm going by tonight, okay? This is where I have some difficulty. When I lump together the general fund and the lost revenues, and this is nothing against any department, these are just what's here. I want everybody, hopefully, pursue their desires, but the reality needs to be checked. DPW department has requested in the general fund and the loss revenues a total of $952,000 in capital equipment. It's broken down in general fund of $157,000 and $795,000 in loss revenue. Why are the loss revenue funds involved? It's because the COVID American Rescue Plan was provided that opportunity. However, don't lose sight of what the American Rescue Plan is all about. It's about public health, mental health, and economic recovery. All the things associated with that, as I said before, are ancillary. All needed, necessary, but unless you actually read the regs, and if you've got the time to do it like I did, we're not meeting some of those objectives. Now, when I go down to the police department, public safety, one of the main priorities in the rescue fund. They get in the general fund nothing, zero. And in the lost revenue, they get one police car. That's what they get. They don't get anything else. We just heard tonight the situation of our police vehicles. Give you a parallel example, just for math. A dog park, $250,000, or 7 police vehicles. That's what the options are. Dog park or police vehicles. That's your opportunity for public safety. I had 5 dogs in my lifetime. I never walked them, they hunted with me. So I never had a dog park. I mean, dog parks are interesting, but there are going to be problems with dog parks. There's breed pairing, there's vaccinations, there is licenses, there's people going to be in the park that could be attacked or not attacked. Is a dog control officer going to be available? I don't know. But that's the reality of the math you're up against. Lost revenue, recommended dog park, nothing for police vehicles. Personnel. If it wasn't for COVID, these personnel issues would not be apparent. But an opportunity has come about, so personnel now is an opportunity to look at. So DPW, IT, parks, ombudsman, maintenance mechanic, just those, it's $485,000. The police department asked for new personnel, got nothing, zero. And yet, the American Rescue Plan is built in for public safety and public welfare. You talk about succession, and I'm not talking about the APO movement. It takes 5 years to train a lineman. 5 years, maybe longer. When you have police officers first come in, it takes a long time for them to become seasoned police officers. They have as much need for succession as anybody else does, maybe more, because of what they're up against every day. In addition, another comparison between, and I'm not saying Jeff doesn't need this equipment, that's not my purpose here. The police vehicles, as the chief said, are out 24/7. A lot of the equipment is stored. That's not being used when it's not needed. The amount of money invested in a vehicle like a police vehicle is so much more in value because it's used more. There are some other items, and this is the problem when you commingle 2 platforms of funding. Then you have a situation in deciding what the priorities are, because you've got to approve the budget for the city of Jamestown, and then you have the American Rescue Plan, which has its own scheduling and its own impact and its own requirements. and it kind of, like I say, convolutes the investment portfolio. Also, in this particular budget, the lost revenues is about 3.7 million. So, in other words, there's out there waiting another $6 million for lost revenue. What would I suggest you do with this? The fire department has fought for years, and I had a lot of experience because I was co-chairman of the fire task study years ago to look at the city of Jamestown Fire Department and what could be done in the future. Not there, but 10, 20 years from now. We looked at trying to build a new fire station and consolidation. You're putting Band-Aids on old fire stations. Just like you put Band-Aids on the police cars. This is an opportunity to build a new fire station with the municipal garage as a coupled feature for value investment in engineering. What will that do? That will make public safety in the fire department unbelievably more efficient and effective. Then you phase out the other stations. That's where the lost revenue money could be going. And then the Band-Aid approach, we won't have to do that anymore. So as I look through all this, I have some real questions. There's nothing against what the mayor produced. It's a very difficult job in trying to justify not only the general fund, but also the American Rescue Plan. But it also comes with great responsibility on part of the city council in terms of what they consider the management of the future, the jobs that you want versus the jobs you can afford. So my question to all of you as you go through all of this, I'm all for public safety and the police department. For them to get 0 and 1 police car, not only are you not funding the police, you're defunding them. I could go on, but you guys, like me, want to go home and watch football. So, it's up to you. It's now a city council budget. I don't need to tell you that. The mayor's giving it to you. It's now your budget. It's up to you to do something with it. But what I see tonight, it's a shame that the police department has to beg for police vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Anybody else? Let's see, public members, so we'll move on to our committees, and Kim,
Sure.
finance.
In this agenda, we were presented with resolutions 1 through 4 that pertain to the American Rescue Plan Recovery Act. In speaking with my fellow council members and discussing with them on finance, at this point in time, I really don't want to proceed with these resolutions for part of the reasons I just mentioned. We're kind of commingling a lot of things here, and we've got a lot of these funded in a budget that hasn't been approved yet. So it won't be approved until November. There's, to be honest with you, tonight was the first time this group met as a consolidated body to even briefly discuss anything in the ARPA fund. So, that being said, it is a recommendation of finance that we don't proceed with these this month. In light of that, I'm also asking for a detailed budget of the ARPA funds. I know that you provided, project A is 250, project B is this, but just like this budget, we're deserving of a full entitled budget to see where you came up with some of these funding and how that was achieved too. So, I am faithfully requesting that in hopes that we can see a little bit more detail. I know that just because you put these in the budget, we're not locked into that, but that's not what the public sees. The public thinks that's what we're choosing to do. So I think we owe it to ourselves, I think we owe it to the public, a little bit more due diligence and a little bit more discussion on that as a public body. Stated fairly, I know we've talked about it. So, that being said, we're gonna move on to resolution number 5.
I just had a quick question before you move on. Are we mandated at all to spend any of that money by the end of the year? any funds at all? Or, I mean, is it based on a calendar year?
No,
or-
we're not managing it at all.
Okay.
And in fact, when, myself and Jen were at NICOM recently, and none of the other cities and villages had spent any of the money yet, and really the advice was really to slow down and take your time, because there's a lot of things that could change in the next, year or so between, the infrastructure bill and everything else that's going on, so.
And I will add, Councilman Russell, we do have to report to the Treasury every quarter on the use of that funding. And I would urge the council to start to meet on this and try to put forth a plan, at least a rough outline. Because if we are to implement any of the things that have been discussed from any of the listening sessions, it's gonna take us 3 years just to get those things done. When we talk about stabilizing neighborhoods, we don't even have enough contractors right now to do it, so we have to plan now and start to put those things in motion. We have to at least commit the funds and start to work on the projects by 2024 and fully expend the fund by 2026, where we will have to return those funds to the Treasury Department. So those come up quickly. So as a reminder to all the council members, what we're asking for the American Rescue Plan Act is simply a master plan of just how to spend the categories. It's not the specific projects. So I don't want us to get lost in that. That includes a huge amount in terms of economic development that will go directly to businesses to support them, as well as a whole bunch of other programs and priorities. I just caution, the longer we wait on even just the basic level of the categories we're gonna spend on, the less time that we're gonna have to prep programs and get the money out the door. That's really the concern.
Well, I agree. I also collectively disagree because you've got dollar amounts on specific programs.
So those would be, Councilman Eklund, those would be under lost revenue, which we've already allocated under the master plan, a total amount. And so obviously that is up to the council how they would like to spend on any of the capital projects. And I'll follow up with you, Kim, on what specifically you'd like for the budget for those items beyond kind of the templates that we did. So I just want to make sure, I'll follow up with you to make sure that you understand that.
Have you done that?
Yes,
Cut
ma'am.
it short. Okay, thank you. So resolution number 5 is resolved that the mayor is authorized to enter into an agreement with Glenn and Linda Ross, 10 Glendale Avenue, Jamestown, New York, 14701, for the purchase of a portion of the property at the corner of Barrett Avenue and Frater Avenue, which is 996 square feet of the parcel 387.14-7-55, in the amount of $1,600.00. That is to be used by the Department of Public Works to facilitate the realignment of the intersection of Barrett Avenue and Frater Avenue as part of the Barrett Avenue Reconstruction 2021 project, subject to the approval of the Corporation of Council as to form. I believe the detail was in your emailed agenda with all the layout, but if you recall the discussion of that, where it comes to the point is to eliminate that and make it cleaner. I don't know if Jeff, you want to add anything?
Just a third-party independent appraisal. We're required to do it. Sure, we're not paying too much or too little.
And that was it for resolutions, and then we have some informational report from Ryan, I'm assuming, quarter 3 financial update and the ARPA plan funding.
So I'll just try to be brief. I'm just starting off on the revenue side. Through the first 3 quarters, most local revenues remain below expectations. Specifically our parking meters violations and the parking ramps and garages. Collectively, with those 3 categories, we've only collected 55.5% of our revenues. So we're trailing, obviously. Our revenues for our parking garages still are not enough to cover the operating costs between all of the cleanup inside and all of the payroll and that kind of thing. We're not even matching our expenditures, so we're not turning a profit, and that doesn't even include our debt service on those. So it's just some concerning for sure. We also have not collected any of our EMS billing revenue that was budgeted in 2021, and I know that the fire staff is working very closely with All-Star to continue to get that process up and running. On the bright side, sales tax continues to trend in a very favorable direction. As we're up at we're gonna be up $271,000, which is 13.67% above last year, and actually $328,000 above 2019. So kind of looking at it, even pre-COVID, we're up 17%, which is very good news. On the expenditure side, outside of our police and fire salaries, we're in pretty good shape overall. The fire department overtime is completely exhausted. Obviously, as Matt mentioned earlier, we've been short-staffed this year. We've had an injury as well as an unplanned retirement, and then the 4 new hires, we're not able to get trained until this month. So we've been short-staffed all summer, and we're seeing it in the overtime for sure. Obviously, calls are also up.
Yeah,
as
that's
you
what I was
mentioned.
gonna ask,
Yeah.
is that mostly due to being short-staffed, or is it a combination? I mean, obviously, I know we had the big fire.
It's mostly staffing though. It's mostly staffing. We have it broken out and can follow up with some details on that.
And you're expecting that to alleviate a little bit when these 4 graduate at the end of the month? Hopefully.
It would take a lot, chunk of pressure off.
Okay. Thank you.
And looking at health insurance expense and dental claims, we remain within our budget estimates. We've only expended 60% of that budget, so we're looking to be within budget this year for health insurance, which is great to see. And we have basically no contingency funds left, so we only have $16,500 left. As you all are probably aware, we spent most of it last month. Most of what was remaining last month with the plow truck that Pat and Jeff were mentioning earlier. So that is all I have. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you, Ryan.
Just as Comptroller Thompson had mentioned, the parking garages, obviously there's some renovations going on to those garages as well. However, we are putting out an RFP for automation of those garages. The recommendation from our parking provider to try to attempt to automate those garages to reduce some of the costs. So we are looking into what that overall cost would be to automate, how that would or could potentially save us in some of those additional costs. So we recognize that as an issue, and we're looking for mitigation strategies for that.
Is that it? Anything for housing?
The only thing I can tell you is we had a brief discussion with the Director of Development, Crystal Surdick, and I think it was mentioned already, but in terms of dealing with housing issues, with enforcement of codes, et cetera, right now, the cost of building materials for making repairs has escalated quite dramatically, so that if people who need to make repairs to their homes right now, it's very, very expensive. The other problem is that you can't find contractors, whether it's for roofing, whether it's for just minor repairs. I know I've heard from a number of seniors who can't find anybody to do some minimum maintenance work to their properties. So I know the housing court, I think you said last time, had 5 dates available between now and the end of the year, so there will only be about 50 code enforcement cases.
I think we're down to 3.
What's that?
I think we're down to 3.
Down to 3, okay, so that's about 30 cases, because we can only do 10 of each housing session with the court. So it's going to be a considerable backlog in dealing with some of the issues that we're facing. So I think it's going to take a lot of patience, and if you know individuals who may be available as contractors, to encourage them maybe to speak with the city, the Department of Development, so they can get on a list at least to let people know that they have openings, that they're available. But it's going to be a long time in addressing what we need to deal with, again, whether it's the ARP funds or how we're going to handle this. It's going to be very costly for the homeowners until the materials and supplies begin to come back, because it's the other things, actually getting materials that are expensive.
And a
some of the other things. It's not just, and some of the projects are being pushed out to 2022 because the contractors can't get the materials on
We have some contractors who are pushing to 2023 already.
2023, I had not heard that, that's even worse, because I thought 2022 was pretty bad. So, more to come, you know, and if anyone, I was not aware that the issue of the double poles was elsewhere in the city, if you can let me know. I'll compile a list to present to Windstream, because I understand it's moving the wires from the old pole to the new pole that is preventing it from taking them down. So if people have the numbers, if they can let me know, I'll be glad to compile that list and present it to, Mr. Thomas.
Unfortunately, I think it's on quite a few streets.
Well, they need to know, because until we
They were, I
compile,
did have two, and they did move them.
they did,
As soon as
well, they haven't moved the poles that I've been complaining about. for 2
both
years.
are coming out for the, I moved the wires, so. that's
Right,
all.
well, I know, but it's been 2 years, so, you had a little more luck than I did.
I got lucky, I guess, I don't know.
So, that's all I have from housing.
Thank you. We'll move on to public safety, Brent.
We have no resolutions, but two items. For informational recording, we'll be holding our annual free rabies clinic on Saturday, November 6th, from 10 a.m. till noon at the Taylor Training Center, 240 Harrison Street. This is going to be a walk-in clinic. Last year we had a drive-in clinic. We got very lucky with the weather last year, so
That's beautiful.
move this into work, yeah. But you do need to pre-register for this clinic. There's a website here. It's register HTTPS semicolon on.ny.gov website 2YPAP. We'll be getting some media out on this. It's free for anybody. You don't listen to it in the city of Jamestown. People, if they had got their animals vaccinated the first time last year, should be becoming an issue with booster. The parrots, I think we have parrots.
If I can just add on to that too, for anyone out there, the county's gonna be publishing the flyer tomorrow. They were waiting on approval from the Public Safety Committee. For anyone that doesn't have internet access in their home, they can call the clerk's office, our number's on here. We will access the link and get folks registered that way.
And they can register even right on that day.
Yeah.
That's all I forgot. It is in conjunction with talking about.
Yes.
Provide the vaccine and the veterinary and so on. Motion from the Public Safety Committee to approve. So moved. All in favor? Aye. Second item we have is the municipal amendment application for a Riverwalk video art show. They're all done in Riverwalk. This is going to be held in the evenings, from 6 to 10 p.m., November 4th, 5th, and 6th. Apply for this, I know Jamestown had some information, but I think he's left them.
Crystal does, it was through JLDC. Crystal.
Oh, Crystal.
The backup from the JLDC application is in the package, just because it provided so much information, but he and Dan, I know they did speak today, just about what needs he may have. He said it's basically a 20-minute, it'll take folks about 20 minutes to walk the river walk, see the illuminated artwork. It's in conjunction with an event that the Reg is hosting with this artist. They'll be having their event, I believe, I'm sorry, Friday.
I did say there was a note on here, for bathroom facility at the point, and this is on the Riverwalk, and public bathrooms there.
Dan didn't think being that it should just take folks about 20 minutes to walk through, he didn't think it'd be necessary.
Hopefully have good weather.
Yes.
Pretty brave to do this for weekend in November. Any questions on that? They're gonna be doing video projection. Do you know what they're gonna project on?
ones, I think that was part of, his conversations and meeting with Dan, identifying those specifics. And that will ultimately be part of what gets submitted with the, I think with the application. So I don't know if he identified those or not in the application. I haven't actually seen what he submitted to the clerk's office, so.
His application that he submitted, that's why I included the JLDC backup with it, just because it was a little vague what he, submitted. I was thinking they would be, projector screens, but I'm not.
No, I think the intention was to project on, like some blank building walls. In a conversation, he had mentioned like the Pearl City Arts building that has that big blank white wall.
Sure.
Is, the ideal type of building candidate or canvas. So I imagine it will be something similar to that.
He does say that one of the projections is dedicated to local artists, so he needs to see some more artwork.
Insurance is in order here.
That was approved for corporation.
Any other questions on this? Public safety to approve? Second. Favor? Aye. Public safety?
Thank you. Move on to Public Works, Councilman Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have two resolutions. The first, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Wendell Companies, 375 SJ Road, Suite 200, Williamsville, New York, 14221, for consulting services related to the 2021 Transportation Alternatives Program and Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, or other related programs through the New York State Department of Transportation, subject to the approval of the Corporation Council as to form. And it's my understanding that we know fiscal impact. The funds are made available through the state Transportation Alternatives Program. Am I right, Jeff, as I read this? Because I was wondering how much it cost, and looking at the.
I can answer that. So what we are doing is we're applying for a state and federal program that relates, and you guys have already passed a resolution to allow us to apply for it.
Right.
We'll be using a consultant to help us apply for that application. So the total consulting amount, I think, was around $3,000, which is what we pay if we end up getting the grant.
Well, are we reimbursed for 80% of it, with the remaining 20%? And that's what I'm wondering about exactly, how much are we looking at?
We're just talking about the preparation of the application. I think you might be talking about the grant itself. The grant does have some, I believe, some sharing, some cost sharing, but this is just for the preparation of the application. And we would pay the fee if they're able to secure a grant for us.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. And then the other resolution, well, we need a motion to pass that through committee at this time.
I think so, but could you make sure in that resolution, Ryan, you include a cost up to potentially or whatever is in there?
Sure.
Because there's nothing in that statement.
Let me double check the original resolution. I think it did not have it. We can update it.
It didn't have a cost. It had
It cost
20% of
$3,500.
productive related costs and 20 other percent.
We'll add that.
Okay. And then the other resolution was brought up in finance for the agreement with Glenn and Linda Ross at 10 Glendale Avenue for the purchase of the property at the intersection of Barrett and Trader Avenue. And so I don't need to go over that again. So, anything else we can add on that, Jeff? No? All right. We're good. Public Works is-
That to conclude the reports from the committee. I understand you have no remarks for open session, but we do have one item for executive session.
I do, I have an item pertaining to collective bargaining agreement.
Before we do that, I just wanted to make just a brief comment. I don't want to start a discussion over it, but I think we need to stay on task with, we have a schedule. Next week we do have the clerk, treasurer, assessor, controller, information services, corporation council, DOD, and Fenton, so we have the rest of the agencies and departments right before the voting session. That's at 5:30. Then we get into November, we don't meet till the 8th, and then we have our amendments due, and just make sure we're following that. I know this year is Mr. Champ would say that we've got kind of two things going on here. We've got the American Rescue Plan funds, we have a budget. We have to get a budget in place by December 1st. And, you know, we do have time on the other part of it, but they are kind of tied in with each other because of positions that are in there, because of funding, and one is taken from another with a lost revenue. So really spend the time looking through both of those plans, the budget in particular, and you know, put the work out there, get in touch with you know, Kim's finance chair and Ryan, and also the mayor's office, and you know, try to work out. We know that with this amount of money that's out there, there's going to be lots of people in this room and in this community that are going to have their own agendas and own ideas on where they want money to be spent. But I think everybody needs to kind of focus in on what we think is most important and how we want to proceed, at least in the short term, and how we're going to pass a budget within 6 weeks, okay? That we have to come up with a plan, and we're going to have to look at the American Rescue Plan funding as part of that in some way, shape, or form. So it makes our job a little bit harder, but also a little bit, I wouldn't say easier, but there's more options, let's put it that way, okay? So it's not gonna be easier, but it gives us some leeway, gives us some options. But really look at those and how they're gonna mesh together, come up with ideas, bring them to me, bring them to Kim, bring them to Ryan, and Eddie, whoever, that, you know, let's keep moving forward and get something in place. We have the opportunity this year to put together a budget that I believe, for the first time in a long time, can have a significant tax decrease if we really want it. But it can also add to equipment on many different fronts and be able to do things that we haven't been able to do. We've been, you know, tied up with having money to do. So we have that opportunity in front of us. So it's just going to take, I think, a little bit more homework, a little bit more time, and I just wanted to get that out there. And it's, you know, a lot of stuff to put to wrap your arms around. So end of dissertation. First court is almost over.
Ryan, do you have the budget in an Excel format?
Yeah.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we have a motion to go into executive. Is there any other new business? If not, we'll have a motion to go into executive session or collective bargaining.
This is there'll be no action
No
taken
action taken.
tonight for discussion.